Supergirl is set to lose Warner Brothers and DC Studios nearly $200 million. And you can blame women for all of it. Here we go. Well. I hate to say we told you so, but we done told you so. Everything about the Supergirl movie that we even saw a year ago at the end of Superman back in the summer of 25 signaled that this follow-up movie, the second in the new DC universe under James Gunn, looked like it was going to be a real financial problem and a real audience problem, and that has absolutely come to fruition. We get headlines like this, though, from Deadline magazine saying how Supergirl ran into Kryptonite at the box office, Superman's cousin to lose $125 million. But Valiant, I thought you just said it was like it's going to be 200. Well, it's actually going to be more than 200. It's probably actually going to be closer to 250 million than it is to 200 million. But there's a reason behind it. You'll remember there's been some confusion about these Deadline numbers since they came out. You remember how they talked about how Supergirl would need somewhere around $300 to $315 million to break even? We've been telling you that that was going to be based more on the net back-to-studio number, of course, than it was the retail box office number. So hold those figures in mind. Let's get into it.
Here we go again.
After the first 4 or 5 days in the box office, Supergirl now stands at an anemic $72 million. And even though the international box office hasn't been officially updated like places on the numbers, since Sunday, it still only did about 2 to 3 million across the entire globe on Monday. 80 international markets outside the U.S., which is unfathomable for a movie of this scale. They spent over $200 million to make, and then got some tax credits back. Of course, the net cost of production, as again reported by Deadline magazine, of about $186 million. Another 120 to 130 million in global marketing. And then, of course, in addition to that global marketing, you had other places like Kentucky Fried Chicken and Ulta Beauty spend $100 million of their own money advertising their own products that they co-branded with Supergirl. Again, as a reminder, none of that $100 million in promotional partnership campaigns is paid to Warner Brothers. That's what other companies paid to buy their own advertisements. So that doesn't help the bottom line here at all. We explained that in a previous video.
Are you watching closely?
$72 million right now. This movie is probably going to finish somewhere around $125 to $135 million. Yeah, that's it. That's where it's headed. A movie that needed to net back $300 million at least to Warner Brothers is only going to put about $125 million at the retail level, which means roughly half of that makes it back to Warner Brothers. Roughly maybe $60 to $70 million. And I'd probably favor a little bit on the higher side of that towards the 70 million side if it reaches that $125 to $135 million mark, because this movie is so heavily loaded towards the domestic box office as opposed to international, where the average take is far less than domestic. But be that as it may, that means that we're looking at almost a $250 million loss on this movie. It's insane to think about this, and there's nothing good about it no matter what Warner Brothers says. Perfect example was a statement made by Peter Safran to the New York Times. Quote, "While Supergirl didn't meet our box office expectations, it's just one component of a broader long-term strategy at DC Studios that we remain confident in." Bullshit. Absolute 1000% bullshit. That is nothing but corporate boilerplate pablum that has no meaning and no value whatsoever. You can absolutely bet your ass that Monday morning this week, David Zaslav and J.B. Perrette over at Warner Brothers had a sit down with Peter Safran and James Gunn about what the hell is going on, and you might need to rethink everything you're doing going forward. And not just David Zaslav, but think about the other David that's coming in to take this company over in the next year. David Ellison. He's not going to put up with this.
You turds is about to get smacked in the mouth.
So what else are they going to misinterpret in this article out there in the internet ether, just like they did the $100 million promotional campaign? Here it is. Industry sources are estimating a $125 million loss after a $68 million worldwide and $37 million domestic opening, and an all first cycle downstream ancillaries. All first cycle downstream, meaning that Warner Brothers is estimating that they'll make it back to only a $125 million loss after they get a little bit from PVOD, digital sales and rentals, and then, of course, some pay one window streaming revenue, and, of course, a little bit of physical media sales. The problem is with that is that the vast majority, if not all, depending on what Warner Brothers does here, of the pay one window streaming revenue is coming from Warner Brothers itself, just like Disney does with their own properties onto Disney+. This is Warner Brothers moving a $20 bill from the right pocket to the left pocket. Now, if you remember in a previous video that I did recently, I talked about how surprised I was that Superman seemed to wind up on Amazon Prime halfway through the pay one window, meaning that Warner Brothers relinquished it from HBO Max, at least in part, to farm it out to a third party for a real paycheck. I'm suspecting they're going to do the same thing with Supergirl, although given its box office, it's probably not going to command that much money. So when people cite this figure, remember, this is going to be a lot of the same crap that we got about Black Adam, including revenue that Warner Brothers pays itself, which is frankly not really revenue. It doesn't add to the top line of Warner Brothers. If they get a check from Netflix or Amazon, it does. But that, of course, leads to a bunch of angry, lefty-leaning women and beta male feminist men out there that cannot seem to read the room, much like James Gunn cannot seem to read the room when it comes to building an audience for the new DC universe.
Boom. Roasted.
Men just don't like Supergirl because she's not this perfect little carbon copy of Clark and fitting their idea of a traditional woman, and that she's polite and kind and just stands there looking pretty all the time. They can't handle a messy, drunken, swearing version of her. Who asked for a messy, drunken version of Supergirl? Absolutely nobody. Especially women. Or how about this from another male feminist that doesn't know how to read the room and would probably make a great business partner for James Gunn. The sad truth is that even in comic book spaces, that should be more evolved than other media landscapes. Women actors, writers, artists, and directors still have to do 3 times the work to get a fraction of the credit. In an exponentially expanding visual landscape where the lowest common denominator is courted and women are targeted, we're going to continue to see these stories play out. Supergirl is a perfect example of how content creators have ruined the experience of anticipating and seeing a comic book movie, spewing out a steady stream of negativity, speculation, rumor mongering, and doom forecasting. Sorry, Chief, but we were all bang on the money. We could not have been more perfectly accurate about this movie well in advance if you had paid us to do it, which maybe you should. It might save Hollywood studios billions in financial losses otherwise. But how about that part about women, actors, directors, and all this have to do 3 times the work to get a fraction of the credit? Let's investigate this ridiculous claim. Here's the woman that allegedly put in 3 times the work to get the credit. A woman that had no experience writing anything whatsoever before Supergirl except for a $10 comedy short. How she got the job for this is beyond me, especially when the film was widely regarded as having no story at all and the writing sucked. If you asked me, it seemed like that woman got a lot of credit for doing nothing, not even 1% of the work that men have done to get where they are and make far more successful films. But the real issue of why you can blame women for the failure of Supergirl is simple. Deadline magazine itself reported that the post-track and intelligence tracking for the opening weekend of Supergirl and the demographics of that audience were 60% men, 40% not men. That's right, the men showed up and the women did not. So if you want to blame a demographic for the failure of this movie, blame the women, not the guys. The guys actually showed up. Not in particularly large numbers either because, well, the movie wasn't that good and it didn't interest them. But the demographic that, of course, James Gunn and the DCU and Warner Brothers were going after for this was the same audience that went to go see Wonder Woman. And if you want to know why a lot of women showed up to go see Wonder Woman and not Supergirl, Well, it was already addressed by one of those previous tweets that we just read. No, women do not want to go see drunken, disheveled, garbage women characters stumble their way around in a superhero film. They want to go see Wonder Woman, a character who is inspiring, that had a screenplay that was very, very well done and well directed. And the director of that movie was a woman. The screenwriter was mostly a guy. But in the case of Wonder Woman, it also had something that Supergirl did not. Something that Millie Alcock herself went out and extolled the virtues of: not being anything romantic in this film. Not having a man, not having a boyfriend, just being her own girl boss, girl power, girl whatever. Maybe if James Gunn and Anna Nogueira had taken a page out of Wonder Woman and actually realized that a big reason that women enjoyed the Wonder Woman movie, if you go ask any of them who saw it, was because of the romance element. Yes, Wonder Woman, of course, is a very powerful, great superhero that is the world over beloved, but it especially hit home with women, not just because the story was well done, the character was well executed by Gal Gadot, but she was also just a regular girl who fell in love with a boy. I know, it's crazy in 2026, but that's what worked, and Supergirl didn't have anything to do with it, and the women didn't show up. Much like the women didn't show up for Snow White either, after Rachel Ziegler told everybody she's not going to fall in love. It's not about the prince. It's about nothing you know. Basically, girls, don't bother showing up. There's nothing in this movie for you. But because somebody out there continues to convince Hollywood executives, even really smart guys like David Zaslav, that you have to throw tons and tons of money at these female-led projects in genres that women have never historically gravitated to, that's why you wind up giving Maggie Gyllenhaal $90 million for crap like The Bride. Women didn't show up to that either. There were more men there than women. Let's make it even worse. If you look at the box office for Obsession versus the box office for Supergirl, you'll probably figure out that somewhere between 5 and 10 times the number of women showed up for this, for Obsession, a freaky, twisted, romantic horror psychological thriller, over Supergirl. Are you getting it yet, retarded Hollywood?
We're waiting.
Hey, you know, Marvel Studios, though, they didn't give up after The Incredible Hulk. That wasn't a very widely regarded movie. It didn't do that great at the box office. Okay, kids, The Incredible Hulk was in 2008, and The Incredible Hulk, finishing at $265 million worldwide, is about twice as much as what Supergirl is going to finish with in 2026. 18 frickin' years later. You know what the box office for Incredible Hulk would be today if the same number of people showed up that did for Incredible Hulk back then and bought tickets like they did today, the same ticket prices they paid for Supergirl? Yeah, this would be about a $500 million movie right now on a budget that was about $130 million. Warner Brothers had better get its shit together, and it better do it fast, because this James Gunn universe is not going the way that they had planned at all. Now, yeah, Clayface may strike a chord coming out in October because it's being billed as a horror movie. And I've seen suggestions out there that they might want to remove the DC branding from it if they want it to do even better. And I happen to agree with that. I wouldn't even put the DC logo on this, because you don't want to drive audiences away from thinking they had to have been familiar with something else to go see this. Don't do it. Looking forward to Man of Tomorrow? I wouldn't hold your breath. It's very difficult to come off of a bomb like Supergirl and then try to resurrect it for that movie, which I suspect they're probably doing a number of reshoots right now after the failure of Supergirl that we just saw. Good luck, Warner Brothers. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.